Welcome to Aptitude for Placements, and my name is Ranjit. I have conducted this aptitude training program at various engineering colleges all over India, and every year thousands of students get placed by attending this aptitude training program. Here you will find all the questions that are commonly encountered in most of the aptitude tests. These are the questions that keep on repeating in many of these tests. So just familiarize yourself with all these questions and you will have a clear advantage when you attempt your actual placement test. Let's start. If A is to B is 1 is to 2, B is to C is 4 is to 3, and C is to D is 6 is to 5. Find A is to B is to C is to D. So we must find the combined ratio. So you have 4 numbers A, B, C, D. Now A is to B is to C is to D. That is what we need to find out. Now the first ratio that is given us A is to B, that is 1 is to 2. Then B is to C is 4 is to 3. B is to C is 4 is to 3. And C is to D is 6 is to 5. C is to D is 6 is to 5. Now we must find the combined ratio A is to B is to C is to D. Now the first step is to find the combined ratio A is to B is to C. That is, we'll combine these two ratios. These two ratios we'll combine and get A is to B is to C. Now to combine these two ratios, the first step will be to assign a value for B. We are choosing B because B is common to both the ratios. B is there in the first ratio, B is there in the second ratio also. So we have to assign a value for B. And the value that we will assign for B will be the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 2 and 4. Now LCM of 2 and 4 is 4. So we will assign B is equal to 4. Now if you look at the first ratio, here B is equal to 2. 2 has been multiplied by 2 to get 4. That is 2 into 2 is 4. Now to maintain the ratio, 1 should also be multiplied by 2. That is B has been multiplied by 2, so A should also be multiplied by 2. So 1 into 2 gives you 2. Now in this ratio, 4 has been retained as it is. 4 into 1 is 1. So 3 should also be multiplied by 1. 3 into 1, you will get it as 3. So the ratio A is to B is to C is obtained as 2 is to 4 is to 3. Now we need to get A is to B is to C is to D. So we will combine these two ratios. Now to combine these two ratios, the first step will be to assign a value for C. Now we are choosing C because C is common to both the ratios. C is there in the first ratio, that is C is to D. It is there in the second ratio also, that is A is to B is to C. So we will assign a value for C. And the value that we will assign for C is the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 3 and 6, you will get it as 6. So we are assigning C to be 6 and we will calculate the other values. Now in this ratio, 3 into 2 is 6. 3 has been multiplied by 2, so the other values should also be multiplied by 2. That is, so only then will the ratio be maintained. So 4 into 2 will be 8 and 2 into 2 will be 4. So this will be 4 is to 8 is to 6. And in this ratio, 6 is to 5. 6 has been retained as it is. 6 into 1 is 6. 6 has been multiplied by 1. So 5 should also be multiplied by 1. So you will get the combined ratio as 4 is to 8 is to 6 is to 5. That is option C. That is A is to B is to C is to D is 4 is to 8 is to 6 is to 5. Option C. If A is to B is 2 is to 3, B is to C is 1 is to 5, and C is to D is 10 is to 11. Find A is to B is to C is to D. So A is to B is to C is to D. So we must find the combined ratio. Now here A is to B is 2 is to 3. The other ratio given is B is to C is 1 is to 5. B is to C is 1 is to 5. And C is to D is 10 is to 11. C is to D is 10 is to 11. Now we must find the combined ratio A is to B is to C is to D. Now as a first step, we will find out the combined ratio A is to B is to C. That is, we will combine these two ratios. To combine these two ratios, the first step is to assign a value for B. We are choosing B because B is common to both the ratios. B is there in the first ratio, it is there in the second ratio also. So we have to assign a value for B. And the value that we will assign for B will be the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 1 and 3. LCM of 1 and 3 will be 3. So we will assign B is equal to 3. And then we will find out the values of A and B. Now in this ratio, the ratio is 2 is to 3. Now 3 has been multiplied by 1 or 3 has been retained as it is. So this 2 also should be retained as it is, so that the ratio is maintained. Now in this ratio, here B is 1. 1 into 3 is 3. 1 has been multiplied by 3. So 5 should also be multiplied by 3. 5 into 3, this will become 15. So A is to B is to C, you will get it as 2 is to 3 is to 15. Now we need to get the combined ratio A is to B is to C is to D. So we will combine these two ratios and then we will get A is to B is to C is to D. Now to combine these two ratios, the first step will be to assign a value for C. Now we have chosen C because C is common to both the ratios. C is there in this ratio, C is there in this ratio also. C is there in both the ratios, so we will assign a value for C. And the value that we will assign for C will be the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 15 and 10. LCM of 15 and 10, you will get it as 30. So we will assign C is equal to 30 and then we will calculate the other values. Now in this ratio, 15 into 2 is 30. 15 has been multiplied by 2, so the other values should also be multiplied by 2 so that the ratio will be maintained. Here 3 into 2, this will be 6. Here 2 into 2, this will be 4. Now in this ratio, 10 has been multiplied by 3 to get 30. 10 has been multiplied by 3, so 11 should also be multiplied by 3. So 11 into 3, 33. So the combined ratio will be 4 is to 6 is to 30 is to 33. So find A is to B is to C is to D, 4 is to 6 is to 30 is to 33. Here option B, 4 is to 6 is to 30 is to 33. If A is to B is 2 is to 3, B is to C is 4 is to 5 and C is to D is 3 is to 7. Find A is to D. So 4 numbers are there, A, B, C and D. Now we need to find out A is to D. Now to find out A is to D, we must find the combined ratio A is to B is to C is to D. And from this we can find out A is to D. Now the given data is A is to B is 2 is to 3. And B is to C is 4 is to 5. B is to C is 4 is to 5. And C is to D is 3 is to 7. So these are the ratios. Now we need to calculate A is to B is to C is to D. And from that we can get A is to D. Now to get that, first we'll combine these two ratios and we will get A is to B is to C. So we'll combine these two ratios. Now to combine these two ratios, the first step will be to assign a value for B. The reason why we have chosen B is that B is common to both the ratios. B is there in this ratio, B is there in this ratio also. So we will assign a particular value for B. And the value that we will assign for B will be the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 3 and 4. LCM of 3 and 4 is 12. So we will assign B is equal to 12 and then we will calculate the values of A and C. Now in this ratio 2 is to 3. 3 has been multiplied by 4 to get 12. 3 into 4 is 12. So to maintain the ratio, 2 should also be multiplied by 4. 2 into 4, 8. Now in this ratio, 4 has been multiplied by 3 to get 12. 4 into 3 is 12. So this 5 should also be multiplied by 3. So 5 into 3, this should be 15. Now we have two ratios, A is to B is to C and C is to D. So we need to combine these two ratios. Now to combine these two ratios, the first step is to assign a particular value for C. The reason why we have chosen C is because C is common to both the ratios. C is there in this ratio, C is to D. It is there in this ratio also. A is to B is to C. So we have to choose a value for C. And the value that we will choose for C will be the LCM of these two numbers. That is LCM of 3 and 15. LCM of 3 and 15 is 15 itself. So we will assign C is equal to 15 and identify the other values. Now in this ratio, 15 into 1 is 15. That is 15 has been retained as it is. So the other numbers should also be retained as it is so that the ratio is maintained. So 12 as it is, 8 also as it is. And in this ratio, 3 has been multiplied by 5. 3 into 5 is 15. So since 3 has been multiplied by 5, 7 should also be multiplied by 5 so that the ratio is maintained. 7 into 5, 35. So the combined ratio is obtained as 8 is to 12 is to 15 is to 35. That is A is to B is to C is to D. Now what we need to find out is A is to D. A is to D will be 8 is to 35. So the required ratio A is to D is 8 is to 35. That is option C. The ratio of the sides of two squares is 3 is to 4. Find the ratio of their areas. So two squares are the square 1 and square 2. And their sides are in the ratio 3 is to 4. This is the ratio of their sides. So let us take their actual values to be 3x and 4x. So the sides are, actual values are 3x and 4x. Then what will be the areas? Side of a square is 3x, then its area will be 3x the whole square. So that you will get it as 9x square. This is 4x the whole square. That you will get it as 16x square. Now find the ratio of their areas. And their actual areas are 9x square and 16x square. So that is same as 9 is to 16. So ratio of their areas is 9 is to 16. That is option B. The ratio of the radius of two circles is 5 is to 4. Find the ratio of their areas. So two circles are there, circle 1 and circle 2. And their radius are in the ratio 5 is to 4. So we'll take their actual values to be 5x and 4x. Now we'll calculate their areas. Now radius of the first circle is 5x. Then its area will be pi r square. So pi into r square, that is 5x the whole square. Now here also it will be pi r square. Here r is equal to 4x. So 4x the whole square. This is obtained as pi into 25x square. So this is pi into 16, 4 square into x square. So their areas are pi into 25 into x square is to pi into 16 into x square. This is the ratio. So pi and pi I'll cancel, x square and x square I'll cancel. So you'll get the ratio as 25 is to 16. So ratio of their areas will be 25 is to 16, option B. Let me briefly explain how to prepare for your aptitude test. First of all, you need to familiarize yourself with all the questions that have been worked out here. These are the questions that keep on repeating in many of the aptitude tests. After that, you need to attempt practice tests. According to me, you need to attempt at least 10 practice tests before your actual placement test. Here, I will be giving you 10 practice tests, and these practice tests will be ideal for you to improve your test scores. The 10 practice tests are available at a cost of only Rs 200. So all that you need to do is make a payment of Rs 200 either through Google Pay or through PhonePe or through Paytm, and you will receive the 10 practice tests. The details of the payment comes next.